Welcome to the Geostrategic Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, whether you're watching or listening. Right now, U.S. warships and Iranian submarines are facing each other in the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that carries 1/5 of the world's oil. One miscalculation here doesn't just mean a military incident. It means oil prices surging, global markets shaking, and supply chains feeling the shock within hours. Iran isn't matching the U.S. Navy ship for ship. Instead, it's deploying silent submarines designed for ambush, turning shallow water into a trap for the most powerful fleet on Earth. In this video, we break down what's really happening beneath the surface, why this favors Iran's strategy, and how close the world may be to an energy crisis. Before we dive in, hit like, subscribe for deep dive geopolitical analysis, and share this video. Then tell me in the comments. Who actually controls the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. Navy, or Iran? Your take matters. Okay, let's dive right into that. The word ambush stands out to me. Frankly, it sounds a little dramatic. We are talking about the U.S. Navy, carrier strike groups, guided destroyers, the most advanced sensors on the planet. Can a couple of small diesel subs really pose a threat to a force that can, track a golf ball from space? Or is this just hype?
It is definitely not hype. And the reason isn't about the U.S. Navy's technology being bad. It's because physics is actively working against them in this specific place. To get the ambush part, you have to understand the environment of the Strait of Hormuz. We're not talking about the deep, open Atlantic where sonar works perfectly for miles.
Right. The reports all say it's shallow, but, shallow is relative. What does that actually mean for a warship?
In the strait, we're talking about depths that are often less than 50 meters. That is incredibly tight space to maneuver a huge ship. But the real problem, the killer, is what we call the acoustic environment. The Persian Gulf is very salty, and it has these very distinct temperature layers. Thermoclines.
Thermoclines. That's like a barrier made of temperature.
Exactly. Sound acts weird when it moves through water of different temperatures and densities. When a sonar wave hits one of these layers, it doesn't go straight. It bends. It refracts. And this creates what submarine captains call shadow zones. You can have a $2 billion destroyer up there pinging away with its active sonar. But if a sub is just sitting below that thermal layer, the sound waves literally just bounce off the layer and go right over the sub's head. It becomes, for all intents and purposes, acoustically invisible.
So it's not a tech failure. It's just physics. The sub is hiding in a blind spot that the water itself creates.
Precisely. And that right there is the cornerstone of Iran's entire naval strategy. They absolutely know they can't win a symmetrical fight. If they line up their ships against the U.S. fleet in the open ocean, it's over in an hour. So they've adopted what's called an asymmetric maritime doctrine, specifically A2AD.
Anti-accessory denial.
You got it.
Which is basically military jargon for, you might get in, but we are going to make it absolute hell for you to operate here.
Or even just to move freely. The goal isn't to dominate the sea, it's to deny the U.S. control of that sea. And they're doing it with hardware that is specifically designed for this shadow zone kind of warfare. We really need to talk about the Fateh and the Ghadir-class submarines.
Let's start with the big one then, the Fateh, which means conqueror. The sources call it a semi-heavy sub. Is that just a marketing term, or is this a real attack submarine?
Oh, it's a legitimate threat,
a
big one. It bridges a gap Iran has had for a long, long time. It's about 48 liters long, displaces around 600 tons when submerged, and crucially, it's indigenous. They build it themselves, which makes them resilient to sanctions. But the danger of the Fateh isn't its size. It's the lethality they've packed into that frame. It has an endurance of 35 days.
35 days. Underwater.
Operational durability, yes. It can stay on station for over a month without needing a support ship. But here's the real leap in technology, the thing I think a lot of people miss.
The
Fateh is equipped to launch anti-ship cruise missiles from underwater.
Whoa, hold on. How does that work? I mean, usually you've got a surface, open a hatch, and fire, which basically puts up a giant sign that says, "Here I am," to every radar in the Gulf.
Right. But the Fateh uses a special capsule system. It ejects a waterproof capsule from its torpedo tube. That capsule just floats to the surface, and only when it breaks the water does the rocket motor ignite and the missile take off. The submarine itself never breaks the surface. It stays hidden down in that acoustic shadow.
And what's the range on a missile like that?
The sources are indicating a range of about 200 to 300 kilometers.
Okay, that completely changes the geometry of the battlefield. The strait is narrow. A 300-kilometer range means you're not just hitting ships in the waterway. You can hit targets across the entire Gulf.
Exactly. It puts U.S. bases in neighboring countries in range. It means that the Fateh can strike from way over the horizon. It doesn't need to see the target. It can get targeting data from a drone from a coastal radar station launched from deep underwater and hit a ship that has no idea there's even a submarine in the area code.
That's a huge upgrade from just torpedoes. But the Fateh is the flagship, the conqueror.
Yeah.
The sources seem to suggest the real headache for naval planners is the swarm, the Ghadir-class.
The Ghadir.
Yeah.
They have about 20 of these in service. They're based on a North Korean design, the Yono-class, and they are true mini-subs. We're talking 117 tons with a crew of just 7 people.
117 tons is tiny. I mean, that's smaller than some yachts.
It's incredibly cramped. Imagine 7 people living in a steel tube the size of a school bus. Underwater for days at a time, it's not for the claustrophobic. But that tiny size is exactly what makes them so dangerous. They are purpose-built for guerrilla warfare at sea.
Guerrilla warfare. I usually think of hiding in jungles. How do you pull that off in the ocean?
You do something that sounds crazy. It's called seabed sitting. A Ghadir is small enough and light enough that it can literally just sink to the bottom of the Gulf, settle into the sand or mud, and turn everything off.
Everything, like go completely cold.
Completely silent. No engine vibration, no pumps, nothing. It just becomes a metallic lump on the seafloor. And the Persian Gulf is noisy. You've got oil drilling, tons of commercial shipping, even biological noise from shrimp. A silent Ghadir on the bottom is almost impossible to distinguish from a rock or an old shipwreck on sonar.
But what about magnetic detectors? A big chunk of steel has to create a magnetic anomaly.
It does. But again, the environment helps them. In shallow, busy waters, there is so much magnetic clutter from debris and wrecks. And if the sub is small enough, its anomaly is small enough that it can be dismissed as just more junk on the bottom. They wait there, like a landmine with a crew, for a target to pass right over them.
Which brings up this whole swarm tactic. You said there are 20 of them. How do they coordinate? If they're sitting on the bottom with the radio off, they can't talk to each other? Isn't that just chaos?
It's a huge command and control challenge, for sure. They probably operate in pre-assigned sectors, kill boxes. Ghadir Unit 1, you own this 5-square-mile grid. Anything that enters is fair game. But the logic isn't about elegant coordination. It's about saturation. It's about a very cold calculus.
The expendability factor.
Exactly. Look at the economics of it. A Ghadir submarine is cheap to build, relatively speaking. An oil supertanker is worth, what, $100 million? A U.S. destroyer is $2 billion? If Iran trades 3 Ghadir subs to take out 1 tanker, or even just damage 1 destroyer, that's a massive strategic win for them.
Trading a few pawns for a castle.
That's a perfect analogy. And when you have 20 of them, plus their fast attack boats, plus drones, you force the U.S. Navy to look in 100 directions at once. You can handle 1 threat. Can you handle 20 simultaneous threats in a confined waterway? That is the whole point of a swarm.
And these little subs, they're not just for surveillance. They have teeth.
Oh, significant teeth. They carry heavy torpedoes, like the Valfager, for close-range ambushes. But they've also been retrofitted with the JASC-2 missile system. So even these tiny 117-ton subs can now launch missiles from underwater. It's an incredible force multiplier.
I want to push back on something here, though. We're talking about torpedoes and missiles, but the reports also emphasize mine warfare. That feels old-fashioned. I mean, sea mines have been around since the Civil War. Is a floating metal ball really a primary threat in the 21st century, or is it more of a nuisance?
It is absolutely a primary threat. And in some ways, naval commanders fear mines more than they fear missiles. You just have to look back to 1988 to the USS Samuel B. Roberts. It hit one simple, cheap Iranian mine in the Gulf. The explosion nearly broke the ship's keel in half. It took a heroic effort to keep that frigate from sinking.
One mine, a single cheap mine, almost took out a U.S. warship.
That's right. And mines are the ultimate asymmetric weapon. You can drop them from a sub like the Fateh or even a Ghadir. The second you even suspect there are mines in the water, all maritime traffic just stops.
Because nobody's going to risk a supertanker hitting one, the insurance alone.
Forget it. And clearing them is slow, tedious, incredibly dangerous work. You have to bring in specialized minesweepers. And what do you think happens when a U.S. minesweeper is moving at 5 knots in a predictable pattern looking for mines?
It becomes the perfect, slow-moving target for the submarines that are still hiding out there.
Exactly. It's a layered defense. The mines force the enemy to slow down and become predictable. They become vulnerable. And then the submarines and the coastal missile batteries take their shot. It's a kill box.
And this all connects directly to the so what for everyone listening. We're not just discussing military tactics. The sources call this submarine fleet an economic weapon.
That is the most crucial takeaway. Iran doesn't have to sink the entire U.S. Fifth Fleet to win. They just have to make the Strait of Hormuz look dangerous.
Because the market absolutely hates uncertainty.
It panics at uncertainty. That 20% of the world's oil flows through there. That's over $1 trillion a year in value. If there's just a credible threat, say a Ghadir pops up, gets a sonar lock on a tanker, and then disappears again. Insurance rates for every single ship entering the Gulf go through the roof.
And those costs get passed on to consumers immediately.
Instantly. Shipping companies raise their rates. Oil traders start speculating on a shortage. One of the sources we looked at estimated that a single small skirmish, not a war, just an incident, could easily push oil prices up by $10 to $20 a barrel.
Which hits you at the gas pump, it hits your heating bill, it hits the cost of everything on a grocery shelf because transportation costs spike.
Precisely. And this gives Iran an incredible lever of power. It's called escalation control. They can dial the pressure up just enough to hurt the economies of their rivals like Saudi Arabia and the UAE and the West, without ever crossing the line into a full-scale war that they know they would lose.
It's a very delicate game, though. It's like playing with matches in a gas station.
It is. But because they've built these capabilities at home, the Fateh and Ghadir are built in places like Aba City. They're resilient. Sanctions haven't stopped them from building this fleet. They don't need German spare parts to keep a Ghadir running. They can keep this threat active basically forever.
So to zoom out, the picture is this. On one side, you've got the overwhelming technological might of the U.S. Navy designed for deep open ocean combat. And on the other side, you have the swarm of cheap, small, stealthy subs using the unique physics of the Gulf to create a trap.
That's the perfect summary of the checkmate dynamic. It's not that the U.S. couldn't win in a total war. Of course they could. It's that the cost of doing so, the economic disruption, the potential loss of incredibly expensive ships, is just agonizingly high. Iran has created a situation where the price of intervention is almost too painful to pay.
It challenges the very idea of what control even means. You can have an aircraft carrier on the surface, but if you don't control the seabed, do you really control the strait?
That is the exact question that is keeping admirals awake at night.
Before we wrap this up, let's bring it back to the person listening to this right now. What's the one final thought they should take away from all this?
I would say it's about the fragility of the global system we all depend on. We tend to think of the global economy as this big, robust, unstoppable machine. But what this deep dive shows is that a 117-ton metal tube costing less than a fancy apartment in London, sitting silently in the mud at the bottom of the sea, has the power to send shockwaves through your retirement account and your daily cost of living.
That is a very sobering thought. The real leverage points of our globalized world are sometimes hidden in some very deep, dark places.
And they're waiting.
Thank you all for listening or watching this deep dive into Iran's underwater capabilities. If you enjoyed this analysis, please check out our other deep dives where we unravel complex geopolitical topics just like this one. Until next time.